This started the movement in Romania.
Okay. No, I said in my speech to the president, I talked about it.
Thank you very much for doing this. This is a small part of the team, the part of Bucharest.
Hello, I'm Ambassador. Good to see you. Good to see you. Ambassador of Estonia. Good to see you. Hello.
And in the beginning, I need to thank Estonia for this great idea and inspiration that changed our lives, and of course Romanian mind about how people in Romania can get involved in volunteering projects. Thank you.
How to plan a thing in the country we have in the first place, and I'm really proud of having this wonderful team.
Like in Estonia, we needed a mapping solution, so we tried to do a report of being in the same team. I thank you Estonia, I thank you the world. Thank you very much.
After the 1978, it's getting very technical, but after the 1978 local government reforms that the Italian government pushed through, because until 1978, Italy worked on the French model. Everything came from the capital, there was no local decision making, and then they went through this process. And it was a huge success in certain places, and then it was a disaster in other places. And so he went to study why, and what he found was that those parts of Italy, which were mainly in sort of the north, and Firenze, Venezia, sort of Turin, it worked fantastically, and in the south it didn't work. And he said, well, what is it that they had? And what they had, which was either an interesting or a depressing result, was that they'd had a long history of civil society. In many cases stretching back 300, 400, 500 years. But if you think about the history of, say, Firenze or Venezia, it's pretty, I mean, they had it for a long time. Now, I mean, so there is a strong connection between having a civil society, people volunteering to do things, not waiting for the government to decide on everything. Now, if you take that and think about the experience of our country, this whole swath of countries that was taken over by communism, that in fact, what were the first things they did, aside from killing people? They shut down all of civil society. I mean, I don't know how it went in Romania, but in my country, they came in, you know, Boy Scouts, Red Cross, student organizations, Estonia, which 120 years ago I saw this photograph of a little village or a town, where they not only had a volunteer fire brigade, but they had a volunteer fire brigade band, and they had a Jewish volunteer fire brigade band subsection playing klezmer music. So that was civil society 150 years ago. So when the Soviets came into our country and the communists took over here, they disbanded everything. They disbanded everything because they needed social control, making that push. But the point is that, you know, things like let's do it are part of it, but it has to be something which is constant, not something once a year and say, okay, we did it, we cleaned up the garbage, thank God now we have civil society. I mean, there are the other 364 days. All right, well, let's do it. If you're an activist, you're planning all the time, but I mean, the point is it's the beginning of something that needs to be done much more broadly. Because you can't say, okay, we cleaned up our country in one day and now we have civil society. It's a permanent, constant thing, and it has to be developed at the local level. And so the first message out of all of that is that if we want to get to a world in which civil society is again an active, vibrant part of society, a part of your country, it has to be a sort of, it has to be kind of Trotskyite. You have to have it all the time, a permanent revolution. Thank God no one's reading Trotsky anymore. Okay. So, I mean, the technology, the second part of this, and I would say one of the, I mean, where we need to go, both in Estonia and elsewhere, is to expand this kind of experience to other areas, maybe smaller areas. Because, you know, cleaning up is just like motherhood, everyone wants to do it, but maybe when it comes down to sort of organizing your neighborhood something, it may not be that popular. What we saw in Estonia, I mean, I sort of alluded to it, was that after talking about this for a long time, people did start paying attention to it, and I said they didn't do this criticism for not paying attention to civil society, which I thought was all kind of funny. But in fact, what we then did out of that, we found new technological solutions and to get a discussion going on a number of issues facing society. Third book, which I would recommend reading, is James Fishkin, who's a professor at Stanford, and he has a book called Deliberative Democracy, which talks about how we get people together to discuss serious issues, which his conclusion is that we need to, in our part of the world, develop civil society. There's a USAID study that came out this June. It's a study of civil society in the post-communist world. It was a long PDF, I don't know, 120 pages. And if you look at it, you see that it's got a long way to go in our part of the world. We need to work hard at it. It is one of the crucial bases of democracy, of a functioning democracy. Civil society in the countries that did not experience communism is far stronger than in our countries. And so, in order to overcome the legacy, it's not just having capitalism, it's not just having free and fair elections. We've got to get people back together again, because the atomized, turning people into single atoms is what I mean. No one talks to anyone, no one interacts no molecules get created on their own. That is what today I think is the fundamental stumbling block, because we see that once you do the right reforms, once you do have the fundamental rights and freedoms and constitutional order, you still don't have what you have in the West. And what is missing is people voluntarily getting together to do things, be it build a new library or clean up or whatever it is. I mean, there are all kinds of things. We see it in Estonia in the last several years it's becoming much stronger, and I think that Let's Do It had a strong effect on that, because its big effect was showing that really without any government support, any kind of support aside from people's own will to do something, you can get together and accomplish something big. And I think so as a motivator, it's very useful also for doing other things. So my final words would be that if you're doing this book, or you've done this book, then, I mean, crucial is that you think about and talk about how to go out and beyond from what has been done. It was a very cool event. It isn't a cool event once a year, but remember there are 364 other days, and you want people to be actively involved all 365 days of the year trying to accomplish things on their own. So anyway, but I'm really glad to see that you've done this, and you can obviously you can assume that we in Estonia are obviously very thrilled to see that this tiny little country, that like all Eastern European countries, is always worried about what are they thinking about us, that in fact we're actually very happy to see that someone thinks something nice about us, and I'm especially thrilled that it has to do with civil society and not something else. Thank you.
The idea of someone coming and doing something voluntarily. Yeah, I mean, the people who were in the Estonian government, formed the government, or I mean, were part of the sort of whole, not just the government, I mean, the opposition as well. I mean, they're good Democrats. They don't really, there's not a problem. But this idea of civil society out there also having a role I think came as a shock, because I would say, just sort of my gut feeling is that they said, okay, well, we've got free elections. This is a good thing. We have, we have a very strong constitution that actually is so liberal and so guarantees your right so much that, it's very hard to convict anyone of anything. I mean, everyone has this feeling that we've done it, but in fact there is this other thing, and then they go, why are they doing this? They have everything. They have democracy. It works. And they go, but there are other things too. So there is skepticism, I think, in a lot of countries, because they go, well, why do we need this? Or why do we need civil society? At least a lot of countries that are post-communist, I find that in other countries that have a long tradition of this, then that in fact is not surprising. In fact, actually, the whole idea of civil society and the role of civil society in democracy actually goes back to Alexis de Tocqueville. If anyone has read that, Democracy in America. I mean, today French civil society is very strong, but in the 1830s, and when his book appeared in 1834, it was very revolutionary to read about people voluntarily getting together to do something with your neighbors for the community. And I think we're in the same sort of early stages of democracy in Eastern Europe as well. And but slowly, the people who are elected officials we begin to get used to it. I would say certainly in Estonia we've become far more used to it.
What I can say, sorry to interrupt you like this, what I can say is that in 2010, and I take sole responsibility for what I'm saying, there were two types of reactions. One from the civil society, people were saying, well, why should I do this? What's in it for me? And the other one, which was not so visible, it was from the authorities side. More exactly, the Romanian intelligence service. I received two feedbacks that they were worried. What we were organizing, mobilizing masses, it was in a context where union parties were also mobilizing people to protest against reductions in salaries and everything. And they were monitoring us. I know that one meeting, county, old county, somebody from our team who was a soldier and was volunteering in our team recognized somebody from the Romanian intelligence service in the county. And the other feedback that I got was from the environmental ministry, actually. Somebody there confessed that they had read my record at the Romanian intelligence service. And I think this was, let's say, a reverberation from the communist period, where in Romania people were recruited by the intelligence service to spy and report on other people. They were concerned. This is just my reaction. This is what I'm also writing in the book. This was at the time, the first edition we were doing. And then there were people like us, because we should look at this as well. 1,280 people who worked on this. They were from authorities, companies, NGOs, just people from corporations.
We were getting involved while we were organizing this. They were, well, documenting everything. On the cleanup day, I don't know if they went there on job or just on pleasure. That would be something to inquire.
We just have a lot of faith in
I have a question actually. I mean, for us it's really the hardest thing to ever. And quite frankly, looking at your country, you succeeded in involving the civil society and making relevant rules to really change things worldwide actually. By the way. And my question is, because you have this European experience and quite frankly it was harder than ours. My question is, how you managed to really change the mindset? I mean, you as the administration and to also do it with you as something in the world. And how do you think that, what are the magic ingredients? Because there are no magic actually, but anyway, what are the ingredients you think we should use in changing the mindset of such difficult crowd?
Well, success is really the only thing that, I mean, that success leads to envy, which is a very motivational emotion. If you see someone have success, I mean, either you can do one of two things. You can try to destroy it and tear it down, or you can try to copy it. And certainly, I mean, there are those who don't like what our people do. I mean, I can think of some political people from both the oppositional side to the government side who are very skeptical. On the other hand, if it works, they have to accommodate to it. And I think that there's no magical solution at all. I mean, I think it's long, hard work. I sense that in my country, it has been a long, slow process, and Let's Do It in Estonia was a significant step forward in this, and that people began to understand that civil society is not just a pair of words, that it has meaning. And as I said, a year ago, it got to the point where people were so proud of being civil society, they started yelling at me. I mean, that was, in a sense, it was a little hurtful. I mean, and I felt that, well, finally it's worked, right? I mean, that it's, people have recognized that it is not simply some silly thing that the president keeps talking about, that they don't know what it means. They figured out for themselves. On the other hand, if you don't do it, if you don't develop civil society, then I think the chances of becoming a vibrant, democratic, free and prosperous country are fairly limited, and that's why I suggested the Fukuyama book, because he in fact looks at social trust, which really is at the one of the core aspects of civil society. Is it really, you find social trust in the countries that are doing well. In fact, he got to the idea of social trust to answer the question, why do some countries do well and why do other countries do not so well? And he concludes it's social trust, willingness to trust your fellow or human being, your fellow your neighbor, the other person somewhere who also wants to do something. If you're constantly suspecting everyone of being out for personal gain, well then you won't go forward. And then think of, let's do it. I mean, that's what I saw with some of the politicians. What are they after? what do they really want? I mean, instead of saying, well, maybe they just want to clean the goddamn country and not sort of get a political leg up to run for parliament next election, which is the sort of absolute. I mean, is sort of this obsession that completely blinds you to reality. Well, it's very important to keep in mind that civil society is not government, and I see some of our people confusing that, saying that let's abolish parliament, let's have civil society instead. And the problem is, of course, then I mean, civil society, by definition, almost are they are interest groups. One's interest group is doing cleaning up. Another one may be to
Protect forests.
I mean, whatever it is, but there are special interest groups, which is good. I mean, but having special interest groups in government is bad. I mean, that's where you have the railroad lobby, and then you have the sort of the food industry lobby, and they're all special interest groups too. But I mean, I read sometimes in our own press this idea that why do we have a parliament? Let's just have civil society decide. Well, then you just have a big battle of special interest groups. And so this is why I always tell sort of people, the authority side, don't be nervous about this. I mean, let them do what they're doing, but don't. I mean, and it's not an alternative to government, even though some of the people think it should be an alternative to government, but it's not. And I've been I spent the last 22 years fixing that. And well, the rebuilding part, okay. I mean, I find much more important to me is I've replanted trees. And I've actually planted 19,000 little trees, and about 200 sort of big oaks. And when you first plant them, they all look like bushes. But they're there, you've done it. And now every year I take care of them, and now they're beginning to look like trees. They're already sort of 3-4 meters tall. And as Thomas Jefferson said, the thing of planting a tree is the most noble thing you can do, because you'll never see it in its full glory. But I think of it that way. What you're doing is planting the trees of a future Romania. If you don't do it, there won't be any trees. But the trees, you may see, when you're young enough, you may see the full-grown tree, but I won't see the trees, no. Wait, I have to run, unfortunately.
Yeah, we have a present for you, a small surprise.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me give it away. We have a book on Estonia for you.
Thank you very much.
Sort of which we're so small, we're worried about what people think of us, so this is about global Estonia. Okay. How do you want me to cut it?
How do you like it?
No, well, I'll make it easier for you to...
Squares, small squares.
I'll cut from here and just cut through here.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have to run.
Bye-bye.
All right,
Okay, bye-bye.